Let the 2028 Smack Talk begin. VP JD Vance hopping on Joe Rogan's podcast and having a field day with Greasy Gavin's never-ending pandering.
Gavin Newsom did this speech a few months ago. The president, I think it's the funniest thing ever because he's like speaking to a group of black leaders and black businessmen, but it's like an audience that is 95% black. And they're asking him about his dyslexia and his struggle with education. And he basically says, yeah, you know, I'm not very smart like a lot of you. And it's like,
I'm like you. I can't even read.
Can't even read.
Meanwhile, there's a ton of interviews where he's talking about all the books he reads. Like, he's so full of
yeah, he's full of
Now, Newsom claims he was being taken out of context, saying he was talking about his dyslexia and wasn't insulting black voters. Meanwhile, the Democrats are having a hot socialist summer, and VP Vance is warning that if Republicans don't turn the economy around for younger Americans, we could soon have a commie in the White House.
We don't make enough of our own stuff. We don't have enough self-reliance. Our workers don't have enough bargaining power. That has led in a lot of ways, I think, to this kind of socialism fervor. It's going to take years to fix this problem. And if we don't, we are going to end up with a socialist president in this country.
And Newsom may be proving JD's point. Kneepads is sounding commie curious at a conference this week. Listen.
Certainly nostalgia is not working. I would argue socialism not going to work. But capitalism as we know it doesn't work either. And so when we talk about rewriting or at least renegotiating this social contract and rewriting it as authors, not consumers, we have to fundamentally understand that it's broken and we cannot play in the margins any longer.
So, Kennedy, we might be looking at what could be the 2028 presidential matchup. How do you think they're kind of jockeying for position?
I think you're absolutely right. I think this is the matchup that people want. I think this is how I know that Kamala Harris is pulling ahead of Gavin Newsom right now because he's had some pretty big stumbles. He's a weird guy. You know, I'm watching that footage of him with his hands, and I'm trying to think, like, where did he come up with this? Is he like a failed magician who stumbled into a cheese ball car salesman conference and is just like using the triangle of power in order to get his point across? And I know the clip that Vice President Vance was talking about because I actually used that in my live show, my Enemies of Freedom tour, to point out what a dingbat this guy is because, you know, he looks like Patrick Bateman. He's a total narcissist. And now he's telling us that he is illiterate. And, you know, he says in that clip, like, when he's trying to speak jive, like, I am you. I'm just like you. I got 960 on my SAT. Oh, you got 940. And it's like he was insulting the entire crowd. And he's like, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. And it's like, oh, wow, this is giving us the hard sell there, Gav. But I do think Vice President Vance going out there and he's promoting his book, Communion. He's actually doing a good job of making himself into a real person. And he is pretty funny. Yeah. Like I was telling him that my daughter goes to college near where he's from. And he said, you know, that's a party school, right?
Yeah, he's got a good sense of humor. He joined us on the 5. He was even making Jessica laugh. Harold, the comment from him about capitalism isn't really working. What was he trying to do there?
You're talking about
Gavin Newsom.
First of all, hey, Harold, good to see you again.
Good to be back.
I also heard Vice President Vance make the point around, he didn't say it as frontally as Governor Newsom did about capitalism, but I think there is a realization that for some Americans, they can't figure out how to make it work. Right. And I think one of the reasons that people feel like the American dream is more and more out of reach is because that reality is setting in. I think for Democrats, there's enough with trying to relate to people by saying that you scored like they scored on an exam, and I scored higher than that, I might add. But I think in a lot of people. That being said, this is going to be a contest of ideas. And where I do agree with Governor Newsom is that we face a moment in America where not enough people are working, not enough people seem to have the skills. Dana talks about it often when we've got to figure out ways in which we introduce and educate and graduate a class of workers that whose jobs and whose opportunities will always be essential in this economy. We've got to figure out how we not only continue to produce people who can be lawyers and bankers and technologists, but people who can be good citizens. And I think the more you hear Democrats talking about that as opposed to talking about Trump, the only good thing about that clip we just showed on Newsom, he didn't mention Trump's name. He talked about the conditions he thinks people are living. And if you do that, you have a much better chance of not only being the nominee, and if it's Vice President Vance, who I thought was fairly impressive in an interview. He said some things about Jeffrey Epstein I didn't quite understand, but the rest of the interview, I listened to it. I thought he and Joe Rogan did a nice job.
Well, Newsom had been talking about Donald Trump all the time, and his numbers went down. Maybe he's recalibrating.
Well, yes, and that would make him different from other Democrats, right? So if he wants to figure out a way to find a lane, and at least he's not talking about Israel, because that's what all the other Democrats are talking about. Think about Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, in order for him to try to get ahead, he had to stage some fake arrest in Israel and then try to run on it. Gavin Newsom's at least talking about what people care about, which is affordability, but I think he misses the mark. You don't get the nickname Governor U-Haul for nothing. You earn it. And my problem with for both of them in a way of saying, well, like when JD says workers don't have the bargaining power that they need. And then Gavin Newsom saying, well, Elon Musk, he left, and well, no wonder he left. He left because the free market is not allowed to work. If you're in all of these different states and at the federal government, despite how much they've tried to pull back some regulations, and the Trump administration's done a good job on that. How can you say that the free market's been allowed to work? It hasn't. If you think about what goes on in California, all the things that you had to do to make Chevron leave that state after so many years, being there forever, and finally are like, we can't take it anymore. We can't do business here anymore. We're going to have to leave. They don't want to leave. It's the most beautiful state. It's got beautiful weather. So the fact that he tries to say that they left because, I don't know why he thinks Elon Musk left. Why do you think he left?
Racism.
Well, I mean, who knows? I don't know why he thinks he left.
Fascism.
But
Takenism.
yeah, all of that. Anyway, I'll let you go.
I'm sorry, man, but like he's just a clown, absolute clown. It's like he's awkward. It'd be like me and Harold were having lunch together, and we went to say hi to somebody, and Jesse said, "Hold on, guys, I'll take it from here. I speak jive." You know, like he just, how awkward that would be. What it is, I mean, the only thing he didn't do when he was speaking to them is start pop locking with his hands instead of going. I think that's from disco. Kennedy. I think he took some disco classes, but it's also hilarious to see a extremely wealthy guy talk about capitalism as we know it doesn't work. Huh? Maybe your money's in trouble because you shouldn't let your crazy wife handle your finances. Or capitalism needs to be a little better about finding out fraud because it seems to work pretty well for you. The rest of the people in California, not so much, but I'm pretty sure your bottom line got a lot bigger when you were governor. So when you hear someone say, pay no attention to my success because this stuff sucks, capitalism's horrible. Let's see your bank statement, Gavin. That tells me that you're doing pretty well. He's just disingenuous. And 1,000%, if they told him that supporting people who want to marry dogs will move him up in the polls, he will be out next week talking about dogs need love too.
Woof, woof.
Woof, woof. I speak dog. I'll take it from here.
I'll take it from here. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.